When my 8-year-old daughter called me sobbing from my sister's house, saying, "Mommy, there's something in Aunt Darlene's closet with your face on it," I thought she was having a nightmare. But what she found that day didn't just prove my innocence. It revealed a betrayal so calculated that even the judge who'd condemned me 2 years earlier couldn't believe what he was seeing in his courtroom. My name is Suzanne Holbrook, and until 3 years ago, I thought I understood what family meant. I was 38, working as a dental hygienist at a pediatric practice in Nashville, married to Patrick for 12 years. We had two beautiful children, Trevor, who was 10, quiet and thoughtful like his father, and Gracie, 8, who had my stubborn streak and wouldn't let anyone tell her the sky wasn't purple if she decided it was. Patrick worked as a regional manager for Fifth Third Bank, and we lived in one of those suburbs where people actually knew their neighbors' names and kids still rode bikes until the streetlights came on. My sister Darlene was 3 years younger than me, single after a messy divorce, and working as a real estate agent in the same area. Growing up, we'd been inseparable. She was my maid of honor, the first person I called when I found out I was pregnant both times, and the aunt who never missed a soccer game or school play. When her marriage fell apart, she spent more time at our house than her own apartment. Sunday dinners, holiday mornings, random Tuesday nights, when she'd show up with wine and cherry Garcia ice cream because she'd had a bad day showing houses. Patrick used to joke that he'd married both of us. "The Brennan sisters," he'd say, watching Darlene and me cooking together in the kitchen while he played with the kids. "Buy one, get one free." We'd all laugh, and Darlene would throw a dish towel at him, and everything felt exactly the way family should feel. The morning everything started to unravel began like any other October day. I was packing for a continuing education conference in Memphis that our practice required all hygienists to attend. New pediatric sedation protocols that the state was mandating. 2 days of PowerPoints and bad conference room coffee, but Dr. Brennan was paying for everything, including a decent hotel downtown. Patrick was scrambling eggs while Trevor complained about his math homework, and Gracie insisted she needed a new costume for Halloween because Emma Rodriguez had the exact same witch outfit. Normal morning chaos. Beautiful, ordinary chaos that I'd give anything to have back. "You sure you'll be okay with them for 2 days?" I asked Patrick, zipping my overnight bag. "Please," he said, flipping an egg with unnecessary flair. "We'll have pizza both nights and probably forget to brush teeth. It'll be anarchy." "Mom, Dad doesn't know how to make my ponytail right," Gracie protested through a mouthful of toast. "Aunt Darlene will help," I said, kissing the top of her head. "She's coming over after work both days." Darlene had insisted on helping when she heard about the conference. She'd shown up the night before with a casserole for Patrick to reheat and a list of the kids' activities. "You work so hard, Suze," she'd said, organizing my kitchen like she lived there. "Go learn about teeth or whatever. We've got everything handled here." Trevor looked up from his homework. "Why can't we just stay with Mrs. Patterson?" "Because Aunt Darlene wants to spend time with you," Patrick said, ruffling Trevor's hair. "Plus she actually knows how to help with math." "I heard that," I called out, and Patrick grinned at me, that same crooked smile that had made me say yes to a second date 13 years ago. Darlene arrived just as I was loading my bag into the car. She was wearing one of her professional blazers, hair perfect as always, but there was something in her expression I couldn't quite read. Later, I'd replay that moment 1,000 times, wondering if I'd seen what I thought I saw, or if my mind was just trying to make sense of the chaos that followed. "Drive safe," she said, hugging me tight. Tighter than usual. "Don't worry about anything here. I've got Patrick and the kids covered." "It's just 2 days," I laughed, pulling back. "I'm not going to Europe." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Still, you never know what could happen in 2 days." She was right. I didn't know. I didn't know that while I sat in a conference room learning about pediatric anesthesia, my sister was putting on a blonde wig she'd bought to match my hair exactly. I didn't know she was wearing the dental office uniform she'd stolen from my car. I didn't know she was executing a plan she'd been perfecting for months, maybe years, to steal the life she believed should have been hers. 2 days. That's all it took for my sister to destroy everything I'd built. And 2 years later, all it took was one brave little girl looking for a Halloween costume to uncover the truth. 2 years before that phone call that would change everything, I genuinely believed I was living the life I'd always dreamed of. Our house on Maple Grove Drive wasn't the biggest in the neighborhood, but it was ours. 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, and a kitchen with the granite countertops I'd saved for 3 years to afford. Patrick had hung a tire swing from the old oak in the backyard, and every evening after dinner, I could hear Gracie's laughter floating through the windows while Trevor pushed her higher and higher. I worked 3 days a week at Bright Smiles Pediatric Dentistry, a schedule that let me be room mother for Gracie's second grade class and never miss Trevor's chess club tournaments. Dr. Brennan was understanding about family emergencies, and my co-workers had become genuine friends. We'd grab lunch at the sandwich shop next door, complaining about difficult parents and comparing notes about our kids. Patrick and I had found our rhythm. After 12 years, he'd leave for the bank at 7 sharp, coffee in his travel mug, kissing me goodbye even if I was still half asleep. He'd text me terrible dad jokes during his lunch break, and I'd respond with eye-roll emojis that secretly made me smile. Friday nights were for family movies, Saturdays for youth sports and errands, Sundays for church and dinner with extended family. Darlene had been divorced for about 18 months by then, and she'd taken it hard. Her ex-husband Craig had left her for his CrossFit instructor, a 24-year-old named Brittany who posted motivational quotes on Instagram. The whole thing was such a cliche it would have been funny if it hadn't broken my sister's heart. "I gave him 7 years," Darlene said one night, drinking wine in my kitchen while Patrick helped the kids with homework upstairs. "I supported him through law school, worked doubles to pay our rent, and the minute he makes partner, he trades me in for a newer model." "Craig's an idiot," I said, refilling her glass. "You're better off without him." She stared at me for a long moment. "You really believe that, don't you? That people get what they deserve?" "I believe you deserve better than Craig," I said firmly. She started spending more time with us after that. At first it was just Sunday dinners, then she'd drop by during the week with takeout, saying she'd ordered too much. She became the fun aunt who'd slip the kids $5 bills and let them stay up past bedtime when she babysat. Patrick appreciated the help, especially when bank audits had him working late. "Your sister's great," he'd say. "Kids are lucky to have her." The week before the Memphis conference was particularly hectic. Trevor had a science project due, something about volcanic rocks that required 3 trips to the craft store. Gracie had decided she wanted to quit ballet and take up karate instead, which meant returning costumes and finding a dojo that had openings. Patrick was dealing with a difficult commercial loan that had him stress eating antacids like candy. "I could skip the conference," I offered Wednesday night, watching Patrick struggle with Trevor's project while simultaneously trying to answer work emails. "Absolutely not," he said. "It's required for your license renewal, right?" "Technically, yes, but Dr. Brennan would understand if—" "Suzanne." He looked up from the papier-mâché volcano that was definitely not going to erupt properly. "Go to the conference. Learn whatever they're teaching about sedation protocols. We'll survive 2 days." Darlene appeared at our door Thursday evening with a pot roast and mashed potatoes. "Figured you could use one less thing to worry about before your trip," she said, breezing into the kitchen like she owned it. "You're a lifesaver," I said, genuinely grateful. "I haven't even started packing." "Go pack," she ordered, shooing me upstairs. "I'll feed the kids and clean up." From my bedroom, I could hear her downstairs, laughing with Trevor about something his teacher had said, helping Gracie practice her spelling words. It sounded so normal, so perfectly ordinary. Patrick came up to find me folding clothes into my overnight bag. "Darlene's really stepping up," he said, loosening his tie. "Maybe this divorce was a wake-up call for her. She seems more focused lately." "She's always been good with the kids," I agreed, tucking my phone charger into the side pocket. He wrapped his arms around me from behind. "2 days. Think you can survive without us?" I leaned back against him. "The question is whether you can survive without me. Gracie has a play date Saturday afternoon, and Trevor needs to finish that volcano." "Darlene will help," he murmured into my hair. "She always does." Looking back, the signs were all there. The way she'd memorized our routines, how she knew exactly where everything was in our house. The comments that seemed innocent then but now felt like warnings. "Some people have all the luck, Suze." Or, "Patrick really is one of the good ones." Or, my personal favorite, said while wearing my apron and serving my family dinner, "I could get used to this. We just thought she was healing, finding comfort in family. We never imagined she was rehearsing for the role of my life." I returned from Memphis on Saturday afternoon, exhausted from 2 days of medical presentations, but satisfied I'd completed my certification requirements. The conference had been typical medical education fare. PowerPoint slides about dosage calculations, breakout sessions on anxiety management for pediatric patients, and networking lunches where everyone compared horror stories about difficult parents. I'd even bought the kids souvenir t-shirts from Beale Street, and Patrick a bottle of barbecue sauce he liked from a restaurant near the hotel. The first sign something was wrong was Patrick's car missing from the driveway. The second was Darlene's BMW parked in his spot. The third was the silence when I opened the front door. No kids rushing to greet me, no TV sounds, no normal Saturday afternoon chaos. Darlene sat in my living room, in my chair, holding a manila envelope. Her face was streaked with tears, but her makeup remained perfect. That should have been my first clue that this was a performance. "Suze," she said, standing slowly, "thank God you're home. We need to talk. Where are Patrick and the kids?" I set down my bag, something cold settling in my stomach. "I sent them to the park. They didn't need to see this." She held out the envelope like it was contaminated. "I'm so sorry. I didn't want to be the one to show you. But Patrick deserves to know the truth." Inside were 6 photographs. The first showed a woman who looked like me at Romano's, an upscale restaurant downtown, leaning across a table toward a dark-haired man I'd never seen before. The second showed the same couple walking close together outside the restaurant. These third through fifth were progressively more intimate, holding hands, embracing, entering a room at the Riverside Inn. The sixth showed them kissing in the doorway. The woman had my hair, my build, was wearing a jacket similar to mine, but her face was always partially turned away or obscured. The timestamp showed Thursday night when I'd been at the conference welcome dinner with 40 other dental professionals. "These aren't real," I said immediately. "Darlene, you know I was in Memphis. I called you and Patrick from the hotel Thursday night." "You called from a phone," she said quietly. "That doesn't mean you were there." "What are you talking about? The conference has attendance records, my room key data, credit card receipts." She pulled out another piece of paper. "You mean like this receipt from Romano's? Paid with cash, but the waiter remembered you. Said you were quite memorable, actually. Couldn't keep your hands off your date." Patrick came home 20 minutes later with the kids. Darlene had called him, told him he needed to come back immediately. The look on his face when he walked in told me she'd already poisoned him against me. "Kids, go to your rooms," he said, his voice flat and cold. "Daddy, what's wrong?" Gracie asked, looking between us all. "Now, Gracie." After they went upstairs, Patrick wouldn't even look at me. He stood by the window, fists clenched, while Darlene explained how she'd accidentally seen me at Romano's when she was showing a house to clients nearby. How she'd followed me, hoping she was wrong. How she'd watched me go into that hotel room with another man. "I took the photos for proof," she said, crying harder now. "I didn't want to, but I knew you'd never believe me without evidence. Suze has always been so good at explaining things away." "Patrick," I said, moving toward him, "you know me. 12 years and you know me. I was at the conference. Call the hotel. Call Dr. Brennan. Call anyone who was there." "Darlene followed you Thursday night," he said, still facing the window. "She saw you leave the hotel, saw you meet him. Then she's lying." The desperation in my voice made me sound guilty even to myself. "Patrick, look at me, please." When he finally turned, his face was destroyed. "I called the hotel. You checked in Wednesday, but they have no record of you using your key Thursday night. No room service, no minibar charges, nothing." "Because I was at the conference dinner. It was included. I didn't need to charge anything to the room." "The conference that conveniently has no registration list available until Monday?" His voice broke. "How stupid do you think I am, Suzanne?" Darlene stood up, the perfect picture of a reluctant witness. "I'll leave you two to talk. Patrick, call me if you need anything. Anything at all." She hugged me on her way out, whispering in my ear, "I tried to protect you, but I can't lie for you anymore." The divorce papers were filed the following Monday. Patrick had already seen a lawyer, probably that same weekend. The speed of it told me this had been planned, orchestrated, but I was too shocked to see it clearly then. In court, Darlene was the star witness. She cried through her entire testimony, painting herself as the loving sister forced to reveal an ugly truth. The photos, her eyewitness account, the receipt she'd somehow produced, my inability to immediately prove my whereabouts that Thursday night. It all built a case I couldn't demolish fast enough. Judge Morrison barely looked at me as he read his decision. Primary custody to Patrick. The house to Patrick. 70% of our savings to Patrick. To me, supervised visitation every other weekend and a reputation in ruins. For 2 years after the divorce, I lived in a studio apartment above Chen's laundromat on the wrong side of Nashville. The washing machines ran until midnight, and the whole place smelled like fabric softener and industrial bleach. My bed was 3 feet from my kitchen stove, and I ate most of my meals standing at the counter, staring at the wall where I'd taped every photo I had of Trevor and Gracie. I'd taken double shifts at Bright Smiles, working 5 days a week instead of 3, volunteering for Saturdays when other hygienists wanted off. Dr. Brennan never asked questions, but sometimes I'd catch him looking at me with this mixture of pity and confusion. The scandal had rippled through our small professional community. I was the woman who'd cheated on her perfect husband, destroyed her perfect family, and somehow still showed up to clean teeth with a smile. Every penny I saved went to lawyer fees. My third attorney, Ms. Thurgood, was the first one who actually listened when I insisted on my innocence. She was a former prosecutor who'd switched to family law after her own messy divorce, and she had the kind of sharp edges that come from learning not to trust anyone's surface story. "The problem is the photos," she said during our first meeting. "Darlene's testimony is compelling, but it's the physical evidence that damned you. We need to prove they're fake." "I've tried. The metadata seems authentic. The restaurant confirmed someone who looked like me was there. Then we need to find who that someone was." Patrick had been more than generous with my visitation. I'll give him that. Every other weekend became every weekend, then Wednesday dinners too. But always supervised, always stiff, always with this wall between us that used to be a marriage. The worst part was watching Darlene slide into my place like she'd been waiting for it. She moved into a house 2 streets over from Patrick. She picked up the kids from school when he worked late. She was at every soccer game, every school play, sitting where I used to sit. Keith, Patrick's business partner, started dating her 6 months after the divorce. They made a neat little foursome, Patrick and Keith discussing bank business while Darlene played mom to my children. Trevor had grown quieter over the 2 years. He'd gone from a chatty 10-year-old to an almost silent 12-year-old who answered my questions in single syllables. But sometimes I'd catch him looking at me with this expression I couldn't read, like he was trying to solve a puzzle. Gracie remained fiercely loyal. At 8, she'd appointed herself my defender. Aunt Darlene says we should call her Aunt Mom now, she told me one Saturday, her face scrunched in disgust. I said I'd rather eat worms. You can't talk to your aunt that way, baby. She's not my mom, Gracie said firmly. You are, and I don't care what anybody says. You didn't do the bad thing. October arrived with its perfect Tennessee weather and Halloween decorations. Gracie had been obsessing about her costume for weeks, changing her mind daily. A witch, a superhero, a zombie cheerleader. Patrick had texted that she'd finally decided on being a detective, which seemed ironically appropriate. That Saturday was supposed to be Patrick's weekend, but he'd been called into an emergency at the bank. Something about a system crash that needed all hands. Darlene had volunteered to watch the kids at her house. I dropped them off that morning, Gracie bouncing with excitement about finding the perfect detective costume in Darlene's collection of Halloween supplies she kept in her spare room closet. I was cleaning my apartment when my phone rang at 2:47 p.m. Gracie's name on the screen made me smile until I heard her sobbing. Mommy, you have to listen. Baby, what's wrong? Are you hurt? I'm in Aunt Darlene's room, in her closet. I was looking for the costume box and I found something else. Gracie, you shouldn't be in your aunt's room without permission. Mommy, please just listen. Her voice was desperate, scared. There's a box hidden behind her shoes. It has pictures, but they're weird. It's you, but not you, and there's other stuff. My heart stopped. What kind of other stuff? A wig that looks like your hair, and your old uniform from the tooth place, the one with your name on it, and receipts and a book. Gracie, baby, listen very carefully. Where is Aunt Darlene right now? She went to the grocery store. Trevor's playing Xbox downstairs. Mommy, the book says mean things about you, about taking Daddy away. I stood up, my mind racing. Can you use Aunt Darlene's tablet, the one she lets you play games on? Yes. I need you to take pictures of everything, every single thing in that box. The wig, the uniform, the receipts, and especially the book. Every page of the book. Can you do that? Like a real detective? Exactly like a real detective. But Gracie, if you hear Aunt Darlene come home, you put everything back exactly how you found it and get out of her room. Promise me. I promise. Mommy, are you in trouble? No, baby, I think you just solved a very big case. The emergency hearing was scheduled for the following Thursday at 9 a.m. Miss Thurgood had worked 18-hour days preparing, and when she walked into that courtroom, she moved like a predator who'd already tasted blood. She'd subpoenaed everyone. Darlene, Patrick, the restaurant staff, even the escort service she'd tracked down through the receipts Gracie had photographed. Judge Morrison, the same man who'd destroyed me 2 years ago, looked older, more tired. He reviewed the preliminary evidence with raised eyebrows that climbed higher with each page. Miss Thurgood, he said, these are serious allegations you're making. Your Honor, We're prepared to prove that Darlene Cray orchestrated an elaborate fraud to destroy her sister's marriage and steal her life. We have documentary evidence, financial records, and witnesses. Darlene sat at the respondent's table in a conservative navy suit, looking every inch the concerned aunt. Patrick sat behind her, his face unreadable. He hadn't spoken to me since I'd filed the emergency motion, but I'd seen him staring at the evidence list with growing horror. Miss Thurgood started with the journal. Gracie had photographed all 43 pages of what Darlene had titled Operation Sister Swap. The entries went back 3 years before her own divorce, before the conference, back to a Christmas dinner where she'd written, "Watched P help S with dishes. Should be me. Will be me." June 15th, Miss Thurgood read aloud, found S's work uniform in her car. She thinks she lost it at the cleaners. Perfect for phase 2. September 2nd, located Brianna through Backpage. Similar height and build to S wig ordered from theatrical supplier matches. S's hair perfectly. Practice run scheduled. October 10th. Conference confirmed for October 12th, 14. P will be overwhelmed with kids. I'll be the hero. Begin final phase. Darlene's lawyer objected repeatedly, but Judge Morrison overruled each time, his face growing darker with every passage read. Then came the receipts, the wig purchase, the payment to Brianna Wells, an escort who specialized in role play and discretion. The dinner at Romano's paid in cash, but with a reservation under D. Cray, not S. Holbrook. The Riverside Inn room, booked with Darlene's credit card 3 weeks before the conference. Brianna Wells took the stand next. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 25, with natural dark hair and tired eyes. "Ms. Wells," Miss Thurgood began, "do you recognize the defendant, Darlene Cray?" "Yes. She hired me for a job in October 2 years ago." "What kind of job?" "She paid me $2,000 to wear a wig and clothes she provided, have dinner with a male escort she'd also hired, and let her photograph us together. She was very specific about angles, about keeping my face partially hidden." "Did she say why?" "She said she was trying to catch her husband cheating by proving how easy it was to fake evidence. I thought it was weird, but the money was good and nothing illegal was happening." The courtroom erupted. Patrick's face had gone white. Darlene was shaking her head, mouthing lies, 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 but no sound came out. The male escort testified next, confirming Brianna's story. The restaurant waiter admitted he'd been confused when shown my actual photo during the divorce proceedings, but assumed he'd been mistaken about which sister he'd seen. But the most devastating testimony came from Trevor. My 12-year-old son walked to the witness stand with his shoulders straight. He looked at me once, just once, and mouthed, "I'm sorry." "Trevor," Miss Thurgood said gently, "did you ever see anything unusual on the night your mother was at the conference?" "Aunt Darlene made me promise not to tell," he said, his voice cracking. "She said Mom would go to jail if anyone found out." "Found out what, Trevor?" "That night, after Mom called from Memphis, Aunt Darlene left us with Mrs. Patterson next door. She said she had to get medicine for Gracie's stomach, but Gracie wasn't sick. She took Mom's car. She was wearing Mom's jacket and had a bag with her." "What was in the bag?" "A wig. I saw it when she was leaving. It looked like Mom's hair. I thought it was for Halloween. Why didn't you tell anyone?" Trevor looked at Darlene, then at his father. "She said she was protecting our family. She said sometimes adults had to do hard things to protect children. She said if I told anyone, Mom would never be allowed to see us again." Patrick made a sound like he'd been punched. The bailiff had to steady him as he swayed in his seat. Judge Morrison called a recess. When we returned, Darlene was in handcuffs. "Miss Cray," the judge said, his voice like thunder, I've seen many things in 30 years on this bench, but this level of calculated destruction, this manipulation of children, this perversion of justice itself is beyond comprehension. You're under arrest for perjury, fraud, conspiracy, and witness tampering. Then he turned to me. Mrs. Holbrook, this court has failed you catastrophically. Every ruling in your divorce is hereby reversed. Full custody is returned to you immediately. All marital assets are to be redistributed equitably. This court also recommends you pursue both criminal and civil charges against Miss Cray. Darlene screamed as they led her out. Not words, just pure rage. The mask had finally slipped, showing the sister I'd never known existed, the one who'd smiled at my children while plotting to steal their mother. The next 6 months were harder than the 2 years of exile. You'd think vindication would feel like victory, but mostly it felt like standing in the rubble of what used to be your life, holding the proof that the bomb was planted by someone you trusted most. Patrick stood on my apartment doorstep 3 days after the hearing, looking like he'd aged a decade. "I don't know how to apologize for something unforgivable," he said, staring at his shoes like a guilty child. "Then don't," I said simply. "We need to focus on Trevor and Gracie now. Suzanne, I believed her over you, my wife of 12 years, the mother of my children, and I believed your sister's lies without question." "She was good at it," I said, which was more grace than he deserved, but all I could manage. "She fooled everyone." "Not Gracie," he said, and for the first time he smiled sadly. "Our 8-year-old detective never doubted you for a second." We worked out a custody arrangement that put the kids first. They stayed in the house on Maple Grove with Patrick during the week to keep their school routine stable. I got them weekends and Wednesday dinners, but now it was real time, unsupervised, unmonitored. Just a mom and her kids, rebuilding. The first weekend they stayed over, Gracie brought her detective costume. "I solved a real case, Mom," she said proudly. "Maybe I should be a detective instead of a dentist." "You saved me, baby girl," I told her, holding her tight. "You saved us all." Trevor was quieter about his healing. For weeks he'd barely speak, crushed under the weight of the secret he'd carried. One night, making spaghetti in my tiny kitchen, he finally broke. "I should have told someone," he said, not looking up from the garlic bread he was buttering. "I knew something was wrong, the way Aunt Darlene smiled when she put on that wig, like she'd won something. I should have told." "You were 10 years old," I said firmly. "An adult you trusted manipulated you. This wasn't your fault." "I let you down." "Never. You told the truth when it mattered most. That took incredible courage." He hugged me then. This 12-year-old who was nearly my height and cried like he hadn't since he was tiny. Darlene got 18 months in prison and 3 years probation. The civil lawsuit settled out of court for enough money to buy me a real house, not fancy, but mine, with separate bedrooms for each kid and a kitchen where we could all cook together. She lost her real estate license, her reputation, and every friend who learned the truth. Last I heard, she was living with our cousin Marla in Arizona, still claiming she'd been framed, that I'd somehow orchestrated my own downfall to gain sympathy. Our mother, who'd been living in Florida during all of this, flew up for the sentencing. She sat behind me in court, gripping my hand as Darlene was led away in shackles. "I should have seen it," Mom whispered. "The jealousy was always there, even as children. You had better grades, more friends, got married first. I thought she'd outgrown it." "Nobody could have predicted this, Mom." "A mother should know when one child wants to destroy another." But that's the thing about family betrayal. It works because you never see it coming from someone who shares your memories, your history, your blood. Patrick and I never reconciled romantically. That trust was too shattered, that foundation too destroyed. But we learned to co-parent, with respect and even moments of warmth. He came to my housewarming party, helped hang pictures while the kids ran through empty rooms. He dated occasionally, but never seriously, always choosing the kids over potential relationships. I learned what it costs to not trust the right person, he told me once, watching Trevor teach Gracie chess in my backyard. Keith never spoke to Darlene again after learning the truth. He formally apologized to me, looking physically sick when he realized he'd been dating a woman capable of such deception. 6 months after Darlene's conviction, I stood in my new kitchen making Sunday dinner. Trevor was setting the table, complaining about algebra homework. Gracie was practicing karate moves in the living room, occasionally yelling, "Hi-ya!" loud enough to shake the windows. Patrick had texted asking if he could bring dessert. "Tell Dad we have ice cream," I called to Trevor. "Mom makes the best sundaes now," Gracie announced, executing a particularly aggressive kick. This wasn't the life I'd planned. It wasn't the family portrait we'd once been. But it was real, built on truth instead of pretense, stronger for having survived the worst betrayal imaginable. My phone buzzed with a notification from the prison email system, Darlene requesting visitation again. I deleted it without reading, just like the previous 5. Some people earn forgiveness. Others earn boundaries. And sometimes the most important lesson is learning the difference. Trevor looked up from his phone. "Dad says he's bringing hot fudge, too." "Of course he is," I laughed, and for the first time in 3 years, it felt real. Trust takes years to build, seconds to break, and forever to repair. But what Gracie taught me that October afternoon, crying in her aunt's closet, was that truth has a way of surfacing. Sometimes it just takes a brave little girl looking for a Halloween costume to bring it into the light. Thank you for watching this story. If it touched you, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear that truth always finds a way. Comment below if you've ever had a family betrayal or if you've had someone believe in you when no one else would. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more incredible true stories. Until next time, remember that sometimes the smallest voices reveal the biggest truths.